Hello and welcome to our latest series of special interviews that we're holding with people. Now, for about 35 years, I've been talking to people involved in the business-to-business sector, and I've been talking to people whose aim is to market a message to an audience of potential customers. Now, one thing that I've frequently heard all too often is that suppliers get called into the design cycle late. And because of being called in late, this often leads to delays, it leads to higher costs and elements of the design being reworked. My initial thought is, what is it that makes the audience hold back from getting potential suppliers in earlier? Wouldn't the engineering application knowledge and expertise of their product be of use to the designer at an earlier stage? Now, I'm sure that some of the resistance would be that the designer does not want to be hassled by a salesman, and I think we'd all accept that's understandable. However, does it cost anything to ask for guidance from an expert with relevant experience? Well, today I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Mark Checkley of KEB, who has 30 years of experience helping customers with automation solutions. So Mark, what is your experience of being called late into the design cycle?
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for asking. Over the years, it has, and over those 30 years, it's been an increasing trend to get called in later and later, especially with new customers that have not dealt with us before. And we've looked at it, and there's multiple reasons. There are three main reasons that we look at and try and address when we're talking to those customers. One of them is the company culture. Nowadays, companies want to reduce their vendors. They want to have only preferred suppliers, but that does limit who they're asking and the expertise that they're going to. It's also, there's a slight power play between the design departments and the purchasing department, and that's a slightly different issue, but you have to be aware of that. And then there's credibility and reputation. And I'm not just talking about the supplier has to be credible and have a good reputation, but the engineer who's looking at these designs or looking at what developments they need to make, they've got to have credibility and reputation amongst their peers. So that's another factor that has to be looked at.
Right.
But with all of those, it does throw up three main problems, really. One, the customer's only really looking at what's available online, because this is where they're searching nowadays. So if you've only got your standard catalogue items, that's not always going to be the best fit. And although those engineers looking at the designs are experienced and have expertise in what they're designing, they're not experts in what we're supplying or what other people are supplying. As KEB, we've got over 50 years of experience selling to products all around the world, and we develop technical solutions, so they're not just catalogue items. So if you're talking to us, we've got access to that experience and the benefits that that can bring.
Yeah.
And then another issue is that if you only look at the online items and then you purchase that item and then you test that item without any discussion, if you've then got an issue, that's going to cost you time and money and delays to putting your product onto market. We've experienced that, not thankfully with our products, but when they've tested other people's products and then there's an issue and it's not doing what they want to do, they've then come and asked at a late stage, what can we do? But then you then get a slight resistance against that technology that they looked at, even though we can tweak it or say, actually, if you look to this part of the design, there's ways around it. So then that leads to the third one, which is delays, increased cost, it's late to market, but that all has a knock-on effect for our potential customers with their reputation. It's also, as I said, the design engineer and the design department maybe get a bad name, or there's a stigma that, oh, they were late on that part of the design. So if there's then that delay there, it has associated costs and investment costs later on. So it's not a small issue, it's a very big issue that has a wide ranging effect.
Right. No, it makes sense. So it's interesting what you're saying. So the hurdles to overcome these issues. How do you think that we can improve on what's taking place?
It's a very good question. It's one we're always trying to tackle. It's You've got the obvious reason, as you mentioned, not wanting to be hassled by salespeople, but it's a slightly different topic and can be addressed in different ways. So relating it back to what I said earlier, it comes down to reputation, responsibility, and culture on both parties. So the reputation, obviously, the companies that they're asking. So KB keeps trying to inform companies through mediums such as this and what we can offer. And it's not just a hard sell. We're trying to give a complete technical solution. But we also recognise that the engineers putting their reputation on the line for going, especially if we're an unknown supplier for them or a new supplier, so they have to trust what we're recommending for them. They've got to have faith in what we do, trust that the advice is good, confidence that we will actually say no when it is, rather than sell them something if either our product's not right fit for them, or actually their designs, we can see an error or an issue potentially with their design. We will say, well, no, have you thought about changing that? And we don't just say no, we give the reasons and the explanations behind it. So ultimately they can trust our recommendations. And then coupled with that is the responsibility. So we've got a responsibility of not bombarding them with calls, as we said, but to give good advice in a timely manner, and acknowledge that the designer and the engineer has got a responsibility to their company to deal with lots of different things. And he's not just dealing with us, he's dealing with lots of suppliers. So projects have a tendency to stop-start. So it'll be all frantic. They're looking at our bit and you're getting the answers. And then it goes quiet for a while, but they're dealing with other things. So they've got a responsibility to other people as well as to us as well. So they have to trust our advice, but we are there to give them the recommendations in a timely time frame when they're ready for it.
So, Mark, you've mentioned trust and confidence. Do you see those as real issues for customers?
Yes, I think it's the main issue, always has been, and I think always will be. It's in our own personal lives, you've got to trust who you're buying from, especially on this, which is so fundamental to a company's design and ultimately their name in the market. So yes, it's for new and existing, but that's a thing that's earned over time. You can't just switch it on. It's consistently dealing with customers in the right way, through a technical consultative approach. That's how we've approached it. That's how I've done it through most of my career. And that's how KB does it. We to get out there, we're not trying to sell them everything, the whole portfolio. That would be lovely. And occasionally we're able to, if it's the right fit, but it's the right part of our portfolio that will go. I don't want to do a product spiel, but we go from electrical, mechanical products through to inverters. So you've got electronic products right up to control and software. So there is a very broad portfolio, and we're not trying to sell them everything. We're trying to sell them the right solution because we want them to be a customer for years. We don't want the one sale. We want that repeat business because it's much easier and better for us to deal with a customer continually over a long period of time, rather than just, we've won one customer and then we're on to the next and on to the next. So you've definitely got to build the trust up.
So, Mark, the dreaded question, how much does it cost to ask?
It's a good question. Obviously, people would say nothing but time. But I would actually counter that. If someone's going to not ask and do the research, and that's a bit of a rabbit warren. If you've ever gone on the internet that you're not sure about what you're looking at, how much time do you waste and end up not even with a solution at the end of it? So by asking, they're not only gaining lots of benefits, some of which I've mentioned, but they will actually be saving themselves time. So it doesn't actually cost anything to ask, but what they will be gaining is, if they're asking KEB, we will guide and lead them to a technical solution which will be in a much shorter time frame than what they're looking at.
Yeah, that's really, yeah, that's quite an interesting insight. I think that's quite a valuable thing. So Mark, from your 30 years of supplying industrial automation solutions, engaging in the design cycle, what will it actually save the customer?
That's a really good question, and quite a long answer I would expect if I really went into deeps. But briefly, you've got the time saving. It's rather than saying what it will save them, it's what benefits will they get. So they will gain in time. They will gain a technical solution that will solve their problem. By dealing direct with the manufacturer, they're more likely to get a full range, a wider experience rather than the standard products. So it's a tailored solution for their application, which, if it's the right solution for their product, potentially there's an awful lot to gain. They could shorten their design cycle, they could be quicker to market, they could lead their competitors because of that. They could have an increased market share and potential sales with that knock-on effect.
Yeah.
On a personal level for the engineers, if they've got that design done right and in a really good time frame, they're going to gain in reputation and recognition amongst their peers within their company. So on a personal level, it could be very beneficial to them. And that's all from simply asking, especially asking early.
Yeah. It's a really interesting insight. It's interesting as well because we've got three different perspectives. We have the supplier, as in yourself, Mark. We also have the buyer, the one who is in procurement and their process. And of course, we have the end customer and we have their perspective as well. But this subject is something that's stimulated an awful lot of interest already. And it's definitely something that DPA would like to open up further. So I'm extremely grateful for Mark coming on and putting his views forward on this. But we'd also like to know your opinion. We'd like to know what you think. We'd like to know how you see this coming across. Now, Mark has extensive experience in automation supply, and you can contact Mark and his details will be on at the end of the video. But we've also we've put together an article for the January issue of DPA, and you'll see KEB on the front cover of that issue as well. So if I can encourage you to take a look at the January issue, not only will you see what KEB actually offer, but you'll also be able to read deeper on what we've been discussing today. And we really would genuinely like to know what you think and what you feel. So we're very grateful for your time. Again, thank you to Mark for his time.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you on the next interview.